Hey everyone, welcome back to another installment of the series that literally no one asked for, Heavy Parkour. Today we'll be taking a look at Payload maps that were officially released into the quick play system. So that does not count any cool custom server maps, but only official Valve released maps. Also, I am joined by the lovely Big Joey Slapnuts, who is one of the 4 heavy mains that makes videos online, so be sure to check him out. Yes, Big Joey can't be joining us today. He's too busy for my small ass bad YouTube channel. So instead, I'll be voicing his lines and filling in for Joey today in my video that I spent time working on. Just ignore it. Just pretend everything's fine, okay? We're fine. We're fine. Now, without any delay, let's dive right in. Starting off with Badwater. Badwater is one of those classic maps that everyone has played countless times. It's one most would consider a classic. Now, there are just a few cool things that you can do in this particular map, the first of which is near the first point. There is this giant mound of rocks, and usually there tends to be a sentry on the other side of this. But, as the saying goes, if you can't go around it, and you can't go through it, might as well go over it. If you crouch jump just right in this spot here, you can climb this pillar like a staircase, and drop on anyone who could potentially be there. On a side note, there is a similar spot to this to the left of this valley. Usually there tends to be a sentry up here as well, so this is a useful spot if you're trying to push that sentry in this spot. Next up near the second point, there is this really useful ledge you can corner strafe onto on the roof. This is highly useful if you're looking for a safe place to eat a sandwich, because not many people would ever check this little ledge. But that's about all it's useful for. It's equally good for offense as it is for defense, so be sure to check that spot no matter what side you're playing as. Now, onto defense, there are the aforementioned rocks near the first point that allow you to get the massive high ground, which is good against soldiers and other splash damage dealing classes, but not so much against snipers, mainly due to the fact that you are completely exposed. And that's kind of it for Badwater. It's a pretty straightforward map. Perhaps that's the reason why people consider it a classic. I don't know. Either way, next up is the infamous Goldrush. So, Goldrush is a map that I personally hate due to the fact that it's just choke point after choke point after choke point, but that doesn't mean there's a few cool tricks you can't do. The first of which is probably the most memorable and is right outside the blue spawn on defense. You can walk up this rock here and kind of just hide along this cliffside here. Really great to just stop down an immediate defense, and it's just a useful flank spot to be. The next one on defense is at the last part of the map by the first point. There's this little fence here that you can stand behind. It's a nice head-high wall. Again, just a reminder that any head-high wall you find in any map is probably useful as long as it covers an area that people will walk in front of. Then onto offense. I mean, there's a ton more on defense, but they're not really too notable, just those two. Now, as defense, you can walk out of the second map up and to the right. There is this little tower looking thing that you can crouch jump onto the right, like a right crouch jump strafe, and you can get into this spot. There's usually a sentry, like a teleporter in this case. It's a really good spot if you want to get behind the enemy lines and of course ignore the full-on brunt of the enemy team. The next spot on offense is later in this second map. There are these really useful barrels right outside the point here. You can jump on them and you can crouch up onto this higher ground here. It's just a useful trick from having you just go walk in front of a bunch of exposed area, and it can also help you get the high ground. And then of course there is this other pot spot, which is not as useful, but it's still kind of cool. You can climb up onto these rocks at the very end of the point, which gives you some beautiful high ground, but also you're extremely exposed, so I don't know if you really want to use that. And then finally, coming on to the last map, and near the first point, you can crouch jump up onto these fences rather easily if you take the left route when leaving spawn, and it is just a good spot to be because of course not many people look up in this game, so those with projectiles will have a harder time hitting you, and there's also a fair amount of cover if you just fall back a little bit. Coming up next is Frontier, a personal favorite of mine. Now, as for the offensive spots on this map, there are only a few, but I find them to be rather interesting if not flat out useful. The first of which is right by the first point. You can easily make the jump over the cart to get from one side of the map to the other if you jump from up here. It's really useful if you're trying to clear out any possible sentry spots near the spawn, which I highly recommend you do. Up next, near the upper round at the first point, there is this water jug just sitting there over on the roof here. It's generally a spot enemies will hide in to get out of your line of sight. Well, as Mama always said, if they won't come to the battle, bring the battle to them. Just do a clever crouch jump and boom. Who expected a heavy to be literally on top of you? Then around the third point, moving on to the fourth, there is this pillar with a medium ammo pack and a small med pack on top of it. Obviously, this was meant for classes that could explosive jump and thus get on top of it, but I say fuck them. I want up there. If you crouch jump around the pillar, you can easily clamber your way on top. Boom. Now you can get that small med pack and get headshot by a sniper out in the open. Wait a sec, why is this useful? On defense, there are probably even better spots than offense. Except for this first one. Right outside the blue spawn, there is this weird rock formation that you can actually climb up onto. It doesn't really serve any purpose other than to remind you that if there is a rock in the environment, climb that shit. Then next, right by the first point, you can avoid that clusterfuck that is the small hallway by crouch jumping onto this sign and then onto the high ground. If you continue moving forward, there is also this little ledge here that you can corner strafe onto, which it's a useful spot to shut down the payload or just eat a sandwich at. Then at the second point, there is this long flank route that bypasses a big chunk of the push, but you can actually get in there from the exit. If you crouch jump and wall ride this metal chunk of debris, you can actually get into the route. Now this jump may take you a few tries, so don't be discouraged if you don't get it on your first attempt. Once inside, if you take the route down to its origins, there will be a door that's locked shut, but when you approach it from the back, it will open. This is supposed to be a one-way door that only opens after the point has been capped, but if you stand here, holding the door open as they cap the second point, this door will remain closed for the rest of the round, which is really useful if you think a pesky scout or combo will try to flank you guys from this route. And that's really it for this map, but I guess we gotta continue upward and onward to the next one. Get it? Upward? And we're on to Upward, of course, everyone's favorite. It's an alright map if you ask me. I think it's a little bit overappreciated, but still it's a solid map nonetheless. Now, we're going to be starting off with offense, and right out of offense's gate, you can walk out up here, jump up onto these rocks and crouch jump onto this ledge here. An exceedingly useful spot because there's almost a sentry directly below this, so not many people expect the heavy to be right above you, especially not in a spot that doesn't have stairs. Beautiful spot if you want to get up there and just shut down the first point. Then the next spot is right by the first point as well. There's this staircase made out of this rock formation here, which you can climb up and get up onto the left side when approaching the second point. Again, pretty useful if you're helping to cap the point, or if you just want to get to a different spot without having to walk all the way around. Another useful spot is up in this top area when approaching the second point. And there's this little like hut thing sticking out of the ground here, and you can actually just drop down onto this med pack down here. It's very useful if you need to do a quick transition to get to the underground, or just get some health or ammo. Now onto defense. The first notable spot is near the second point on the higher ground. There are these rock formations, which don't even get me started on these rock formations, I love them all. This first one is probably the most useful of the bundle, which is a really useful head-high wall, right above a spot the payload has to go to, so you can shut down both paths simultaneously, and it's even better if you have a medic with you. Another useful spot is you can strafe around this rock formation right in front of you to get quickly around that rock without having to walk in front of a spot most people expect you to go. Another rock formation that's pretty useful is on the left here. You can walk up to this spot from the cliff, so say if you happen to fall down, you can just walk back up. You don't have to walk all the way around like most people would end up doing, especially if this happens to be one of their first times playing the game. And now, I believe you could make this jump near a third point, where you can jump from this fence into this enclosed area, but I seriously tried for like 2 minutes, just non-stop, and I couldn't get it. So maybe that just says something about me, or maybe that says something about the fact that I always use the eviction notice and that speed boost is vital. Who knows, but give it a shot. I don't think you can, but I do remember being able to do something like that. So maybe I'm just going insane. So in Thunder Mountain, I'm gonna level with you. I can only find one useful spot on offense, and I can't really believe it. So I implore you to inform me of the spots that you may have found on offense. Mainly because I am disgusted that I play this map as generically as I do. Usually I try to play it more like a ninja, but for some reason, Thunder Mountain, I just sit on the payload because I'm an idiot. Anyways, the one useful spot I found was on the last section of the map. You know, the one with the giant big tower thingy. Near the first point, you can get onto this balcony rather easily. If you crouch jump onto this roof, you can walk right up onto this massive fence right in front of the red spawn. Now you truly are a heavy bird with the best high ground in the game. Just be careful not to fall off, because that ends rather poorly. As for defense, there are a bundle more. On the first map, there are two great spots right outside the blue spawn. There's this big rock which you can get up on top of, and since no one looks up in this game, it's useful to be up there. Then, a much more beneficial jump is on your way to the spawn from the second point. You can hop up onto the shed and then crouch jump to the ledge here, which will put you exceedingly close to the enemy spawn in a spot that not many people imagine a heavy being able to get to. Then, in the second map, you can get onto this rock right outside the blue spawn, which is kinda useful, but it's not great in my humble opinion. You gotta do some corner strafing with a little bit of crouch jumping to get up. It's not too hard, to be honest, and there's no real use for it, but hey, you can do it. But a much more useful spot is on the stairs right next to the first point. If you come up most of the way on the stairs, there is this really useful head-high wall behind some rails that gives you a clear view of one of the most common routes enemies will take when trying to attack. So you can just stand back here while they can't even see you, and you just mow them down. It is phenomenal. And just like the sound of thunder, the parkour on this map passes. Up next we got Hoodoo! And we go to Hoodoo, arguably the worst payload map in the entire game! So, Hoodoo, I'm not going to spend much time playing Hoodoo because I don't like to. But immediately you'll probably notice that I'm trying to do this rock jump, which is very infamous and very famous for those who have played this map. There's a flank route, the one-way flank route up to the left, but if you hop onto this fence, you can actually jump into there. However, you can only do this with the eviction notice. Trust me, I tried countless times with just using the stock fists, and I couldn't make it. Then the next one is over by the last map. In the first point, you can hop up onto these rocks right outside of spawn. It's a pretty good spot if you need high ground to shut out enemy projectile classes like soldiers and demos, but if they have a single sniper, it's probably not going to bode too well for you. And then finally, on offense, near the first point on the first map, you can drop into the trenches, which may seem like a downside because it appears the only exit is behind you, so you kinda lost ground, but actually there's a weird rock formation right in front of you that you can crouch jump up like stairs to get up onto the other side of the gorge, with not many people realizing that a heavy can just pop up like that. In BarnBlitz, the offense isn't too great in my opinion, but it's still a little bit cool, kinda. Near the second point, there's this pole that sticks out of the cliff. It's never really going to come in handy, but hey, you can do some cool posing up there if you want. That's about the only reason to go up there, but hey, you can do it. On the third point, there are these head-high walls near the payload that are really useful, as always. Again, there are a ton in every map we've discussed thus far, and most I won't point out. I just wanted to remind you guys to keep a vigilant eye for these, because they can easily change the tide of battle. Again, because bullets come out of your face and not your minigun, so if you just have your head sticking out of a point, you can do full damage, while your head is the only part of your body that can get hit. Then you can also get up onto this balcony of sorts by these boxes here. Don't really know why you'd want to, but hey, you can do anything if you want to. Finally, at last, you can jump up onto this pole from this balcony in the flank route. And it's a bit of a jump, but if you're able to make it, most enemies won't expect the heavy to be perched up on this little tiny pole sticking out of the wall. Pretty useful, although you are extremely exposed. Now, on defense, there is this one really useful spot near first. It's right above this fence here, and it's a great spot to eat a sandwich, or just cover the payload up from above. Then, near the third point, you can corner strafe to get up to this pathway that most enemies take. It is exceedingly useful to get the high ground and shut down pushes against your point. And if you need to, you can fall back to the spot here, where it is relatively safe to eat a sandwich at. Not too many people check up here to see if the heavy is healing up. Keeping with the snowy theme, up next we got Snowy Coast. And we're on to the recent edition of Snowy Coast. It's not my favorite map, but hey, you know, it's a map nonetheless. Snowy Coast has this weird little spot on defense that's exceedingly useful, where you can crouch jump up onto this fence, and you can be even more of a heavy bird than in maps like Thunder Mountain. In Snowy Coast, this spot is exceedingly useful to shut down soldiers, demos, or anyone that uses projectiles for that matter, because how are they going to hit a heavy all the way up there? It's just preposterous. It's a very useful spot, trust me. The other one is right outside the blue spawn on this truck. It's a little bit simpler of a spot, because all you gotta do is just crouch jump up onto a truck, but it is still very useful, especially if you're trying to shut down the path on the left. Then on offense, the most notable spot I really wanted to share with was right by the first point. If you go to the right side of spawn, and you just walk up to this little courtyard area, it's a very useful spot because not only is there a head-high wall to your right that can help you shut down any sentries or any potential team members that might be trying to hold the opposing side, but you can also just get that small med pack with a medium ammo pack, as well as being able to jump over the corner and get the other medium health pack right on the other side. It's a beautiful spot, especially if you're playing heavy and you have a medic with you. Now, in Borneo, there are some really useful tricks you can pull off. Coming up in the first point, there always seems to be a sentry in this corner here. If you stand right below this ledge, you can get into this beautiful head-high wall that will cover you from most of the sentry's fire, while you're able to dish out damage until it's gone. Then there is the ability to get up onto this balcony with a corner strafe at the second point. Usually there's a sentry up here as well, or directly below it. So getting up here can be tricky, but once you are able to get into this spot, you are successfully behind enemy lines, and you can rain down hell onto the enemies who may or may not be aware of the 300 health fat Russian man above them. Then near the third point, there is the staircase of boxes, which leads into a really good head-high wall on its top. It is a very useful spot to push, because not only do you get the high ground in a spot not many people expect a heavy to be, but you also get a fair amount of cover for doing so, which not a lot of high ground will give you. On defense, there is this fantastic jump near the third point that allows you to get up onto this bridge above the payload. It's often viewed as a one-way bridge, so it'll throw enemies off guard and help you get behind them. And it's also above people, so the odds of you being seen is slim to none because, again, people fail to look up in this game. Then in general, on the third point, it is really effective to stand up on this top floor in the warehouse. It's not really a parkour spot, but just a general gameplay tip. Being up here allows you to rain down onto the payload and dodge 99% of the incoming projectiles, as well as shutting down the only two entrances up there. If you're able to stand up there on defense, oh buddy. In a similar idea, right outside the fourth point, there is this ledge that the cart will go under. It's very easy to walk up onto, and since it's right behind the cart, not many people will be aware of your presence. So when the cart is directly underneath you, you can just start raining downhill onto them. It's not a parkour spot, but seriously, people don't look up in this game. So would you rather fire into their backs undetected, or take the front of the push head on? It's a pretty simple choice. But hey, that was quick and swift. Now we're going into a map that doesn't have much water. Oh, that sucked. That sounded way better in my head. Guys, it's Swiftwater. Just ignore that horrible pun. Ugh, I'm gonna go drink bleach. Ugh. Now on to Swiftwater. Boy, this map brings back bad memories from UGC. Right out of the bat, near the third point on offense, you can crouch jump up onto this water tower if you take the higher path on the left. It is rather useful because not many people look up in this game, and two, because how the hell did a heavy get up on top of this high water tower? It's just crazy. I mean, who would think a heavy can do that? Now the next one is on offense, right out of the blue spawn. Let's say you haven't capped first yet. The one-way door hasn't opened quite yet. But let's say you want to get onto that side of the ravine. Rather than having to walk all the way around, you can just hop up onto this little ledge sticking out of the window here and just corner strafe right around to the right, which will get you much closer to the point and right to the spot where the enemies will have to walk through if you want to shut them down before they can intervene with your team capping the point. Now, on defense, the one useful spot Big Joey mentioned, I personally never used it because I don't like this map, but Big Joey recommended this, so this is a Big Joey guarantee. Don't take my word for it, take his word. Right outside the fourth point, there is this rock fence formation that's a beautiful head-high wall and can monitor the entire open area. Very useful if you can have a team holding with you, or just even a medic. But again, I wasn't able to get any actual footage of it, just kind of showing where the spot was, so don't take my crystal clear word for it. Last and certainly least is Enclosure. You know, the payload map from the Jungle Inferno update. You guys remember that one? No? Because no one enjoyed it? Alright, well, coming in on offense, there is this rather decent head-high wall right outside the blue spawn on the first map. It's not all too practical, as it's a distance away from the action, but it is still useful sometimes. Oh yeah, there's also this tree you can climb up into. Not really sure why you'd want to on offense, or even on defense, because it's only really useful to snipers. But hey, you're able to do it. So that's cool. Then on the second map, there are these stairs made out of rocks that you can climb up to get onto one of the best vantage points in the entire map. Alternatively, you can just walk up there from spawn, but let's say you're an idiot and forget to do that. Don't fret, because you can just hop up these rocks and boom, you're set. Then on the third map, approaching second and last, there is this small room that tends to have a fuck ton of pyros in it, or at least a sentry in there. I say fuck that. You can slide up this pallet and climb up onto this fence here. Then you can either hop over the fence to avoid that clusterfuck of a room, or you can just stay up there perched on your fence and rain down onto the unsuspecting players who refuse to look up. Then finally, there was only really one useful spot on defense, and this was right outside the blue spawn to the right. There's this little tiny cliff that you can sit on and wait for enemies to push past. Once they pass, you can pop out and surprise them with a full health heavy that happens to be behind the payload. Certainly not something most players would expect to happen too often. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks again to Biggie Joe for helping out. Make sure you guys check him out. He's pretty cool, lad, if I say so myself. Also, be sure to tell us which one of us has a better voice. I know it's me, obviously, but I just want the confirmation. As always, have a swell rest of your day. Peace out.